So welcome everybody to Cardinal Court, and thanks very much for joining us this evening for our first Nibbles and Natter event. We're joined by some lovely customers of MSV, so they're going to be asking us some challenging questions this evening. Just to start off though, before we do any introductions, we've just got a short clip to show from Charlie, our Chief Executive, who would like to have been here with us this evening but can't make it. She's at another event that she couldn't get out of. So cue Charlie.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of our Nibbles and Natter sessions. I'm Charlie Norman and I'm the Chief Exec of MSV. This is a really good opportunity. We hope to hear from our residents about things that matter to you, and we'll be out and about in the communities with a fish and chip ban in the future to have a chat with everybody and just hear from you all about the things that are important to you. Really looking forward to a lively debate and discussion tonight, and look forward to more of these to come. Let this be the start of something really good.
We've had a few questions that have been emailed into us over the last few days from various customers across MSV's areas. So we'll start with a couple of those and then we'll throw it out to the floor. So the first question is around communal repairs. So communal repairs reported via the My MSV account are now listed against block repairs and so can be tracked. Why does this not happen if you phone in? And this is a question for Tranjit to answer.
So we're making a lot of improvements to what we can show people on their self-service accounts, and this is a really important improvement so that you can see not only the repairs that you've got for your own property but also communal repairs. And when you phone in, it does involve the person in the service centre looking to provide you with information on communal repairs, but it can be done. You can see it much better on the website, but it can be done when you call in. You just have to be clear with people that it is a repair in the communal area. Is that okay, everyone?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Tranjit. So another one of the questions that we've had in was, last year you were encouraging people to use the My MSV account and had a prize draw to win an iPad or tablet, one a month for 12 months. Did this happen, and if so, why have you not published winners' names on the website? Well, I can answer that question. We have actually done a few draws for iPads already. We've only actually got one person that would like to have publicity, and we've struggled getting hold of that person at a mutually convenient time, and Tranjit will tell you he's tried over the last few months to arrange it, but for one reason or another it hasn't happened. But we are hoping to do some publicity with that particular customer, and it'll be in the next newsletter. But we are doing the draws to try and encourage people to log on to My MSV account, and we'll be doing more in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. So shall we open it up to questions from the floor to see if anybody's got anything that they would like to raise with us this evening? Tracy.
One of the other things I'm involved in is a disabled persons panel, and it's coming to an end soon, but basically the panel existed so that organisations could canvass the opinions of disabled people and have their accessibility checked by disabled people, to make sure that it was, people could read the website or get around the building or whatever it might be. And I was wondering if there's any scope for a disabled tenants user group to be set up to do similar things for MSV. So for instance, I'm struggling a bit tonight because I've got a hearing impairment. So someone with a disability could feed that back to you. And just to make make the housing and accessing MSV services easier for disabled people. I don't know if there are other tenants out there who'd be interested.
Thanks, Tracy. So I think that's possibly a question for either Ruth or Taranjit.
Well, just this week, as it happens, Tracy, I was in a Teams meeting with a customer who lives in Bolton, and she'd contacted us about she'd recently had a diagnosis, and she and I spent 30-40 minutes on the phone, virtually, just talking about her diagnosis and how we could shape our service around her. So we are absolutely open to the panel and indeed any other customer that wants to help us get our services shaped more around the individual where we need to get them shaped around the individual. So we are open to that, absolutely. And I'd welcome the chance to speak to the panel and involve them in different ways in helping us get our services tailored where we need to tailor them.
Is that okay for you, Tracy?
Can I just add to that,
Course,
if I may?
Matt.
I mean, I think one of the things that we do recognise, Tracy, is that we need, in terms of our, if you like, customer voice, customer involvement, there does need to be a much kind of more diverse range of thought and kind of demographic there. So we are in a little bit of a danger, and I don't say this is an MSV issue, I think it's a sector-wide challenge that sometimes we're just talking to the same people about the same things, and it can become a little bit of an echo chamber. And I think, you know, the more people that we can engage with, certainly we'd be very open to having that conversation around, as part of that, ramping up of our customer voice and some of our structures around involvement, how we can take that forward, absolutely.
Thanks, Matt. So does that answer your question, Tracy?
It does, yeah. I'm just a bit... you see, I've been involved with MSV for a long time as an involved tenant and as a board member. Don't ask how I got on the board, it's something of a miracle. Because I'm just a, you know, ordinary person. But what I've noticed is I've never really seen anybody with a visible disability in any of the MSV offices. And I know there are invisible disabilities, but what happens is if you don't have disabled people helping to make decisions, if then services don't get provided to meet needs, because I have no idea what it's like, for instance, to be blind, but I know what it's like to struggle to hear. I don't know what it's like not to be able to walk, but so if there are people in management who don't have those disabilities, they won't know what's needed. So like you might notice that I'm speaking really quite loudly tonight. That's so everyone can hear, because if you just speak normally, I can't hear. If you're wearing a mask, I can't hear, because I lip read as well. But that's only because I have that personal experience and awareness. So that's why I'm trying to fly the flag for disabled people.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very fair point.
There's one. Sorry, let me just say one thing about that. I would agree with that to a certain degree, but when you're running a company, you need people with the abilities to run the company, not particularly because they're disabled. And I think it would be wrong. I'm disabled in one of two ways. One, I'm deaf. One, I can't walk very well, but I do. But we should not start to bring people in because they're disabled, but if they're disabled and able to do the work they want. But I think the first thing we should always remember is we need people to do the job properly.
Oh, I would
I
agree.
think that they could talk to disabled people. You don't have to have somebody disabled to work for you. When you employ people, you employ people to do a job and to do that job well. If they can't do that job, it's not much use employing them, and you shouldn't employ them because of a disability. I think that is wrong. I think that you employ people to do the job. If they want people with disabilities, you can talk to them, but you do employ people to do the job that you employ them to do.
I think
Absolutely, but disabled people, disabled tenants should have a voice in that to shape. I'm not saying that you employ someone just because they're disabled. Obviously, someone has to have the skills
But you
to
were.
do the job, yes, but a bit more input.
I think
Yeah.
this is exactly the point that Tracy's making. When we are providing our services, building our properties, doing whatever we're doing, we need to make sure, and it comes back to something that Matt said, we need to make sure that we listen to the voices that would use a place like this or interact with this service. So it's not necessarily about the employment side of things, but it is very much about the fact that if a customer gets in touch with us this way, that way or the other, well, they tell us about a diagnosis that they may have, and we can adapt the service to it. We should listen. And there's
That's
lots
fine.
of things.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm
Absolutely.
not saying that, but I'm
Absolutely.
saying employment.
Yes.
You shouldn't employ people just for a disability. You listen to disability, yes, I will agree. You must do, that's your job.
Yeah, and that's
But
exactly
the people
what we're
who are doing
talking
the
about.
job that we need. The disability, you can talk to people with disabilities.
Yeah.
I don't think you should employ people just because they've got a disability.
No. If it's okay, would this lady just say who you are and then just raise your question?
Jodie.
Oh, I've met you before, Jodie. Thank you.
And
for
regarding to like the disability, what they was talking about, I think on the MSV, like where disability is concerned, I think things need to move faster.
Yeah.
Like if they have a problem with a pipe, with a toilet, instead of waiting 6 weeks or 3 months to get somebody, I think there should be a bit of priority to make sure like people with disability that living in MSV house have a say and will listen to, and the job can be done faster than somebody who don't have a disability. Because there's a lot of people in like MSV houses with kids with disability, and sometimes the shower not working or the part not working, they have to wait 6 weeks, 8 weeks before a plumber can come and do it. I think should be a disability panel where they can discuss if you have proof, have you got a child in this property or yourself have a disability, if anything go wrong with the property, we will do it within the next 2 weeks. If it can be done before that, then that's fine, but within the 2 weeks, I think that's reasonable time, than wait 6 weeks to 8 weeks. So I think that's something that NSV need to look into when it comes to all here, but in Mossad there's a lot of disability kids live within Mossad, and some of them have special need, like they have to have shower and all the things, and if the shower not working and it's a cold time, then the mom might have to boil a kettle to get the water. So take that stress off the parents. It's best if we can put something forward for them.
Yeah. Well, I think we've noted about the disability panel, and thank you for raising it, and we'll take that forward.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go to one of the questions that was submitted by one of our customers during the week by email. And I know it's an issue for a lot of people, so we want to address it tonight. And that is, how many staff are answering phone calls, and has this number reduced? The waiting time is ridiculous. Recently, I waited more than 15 minutes before I moved higher up the queue. I normally use ringback, but not all customers trust this system. And I'm just going to ask Taranjit to address that, please.
So we know that the time it's taking to answer calls is nowhere near where we want it.
Yes.
We have the same number of people. We haven't reduced the number of people. We are very conscious of the times, and we're changing the way that we're handling calls to put more people onto phones rather than digital traffic.
Yes.
We still need to handle that digital traffic, because if somebody's sent in a request, we're not just going to leave it there, but we are changing the way that we're handling it so that we can focus more people on calls between 8:30 and 5 o'clock. We, like everybody else, are subject to the same sort of things that go on unemployment. You know, we do have a number of people who aren't well at the moment, and we have to cope with that. But we also have to change the way that we do things. We know as well that, particularly during the pandemic, that we've got a lot of vulnerable people out there, and we know that our average call times actually on the phone have gone up over this last 2 years, and that in part reflects the complexities of the people that we're trying to help and support, and also their situations, and it's a difficult balance. You do want to get onto the next call if you can, but you don't also want to end a call sooner than you should. But yes, we are very aware of how long it's taking for people to get their calls answered, and we have made some changes this week and last week, and we'll be making more changes as the days go on, so that we can get more calls answered and people are happier with the call answering times. And I would say to everybody, the callback service gets regularly tested, so please use it.
Thank you, Sir
Can I
Andrew.
just add to that, if I may? I mean, I think Shannon just covered that really comprehensively, but we do recognise it's one of the top priorities in the business at the moment, and there are lots of mitigating factors and circumstances, but I suppose put bluntly, we need to get it sorted out, because ultimately that's not the customer's problem, is it? That's our problem as a business, and we are very mindful of that. So, you know, hopefully we'll see some progress with that over the next, you know, days and weeks ahead.
Thank you, Matt. I'm just going to take one more question here that has been emailed in to us before I go back to the floor. So, how often do you have to pay an external company to remove rubbish, and would it be cost effective to employ your own operative? I'm going to ask Matt to answer that, please.
I can't comment on how often we pay people. What I can say is that we spend a significant sum of money clearing rubbish, fly tipping. Yes, that's correct, it is external companies that we use. I think it's a very interesting, very valid question. It might be cheaper for us to sort of recruit either our member of staff or even a small team. I think what I would just say is that actually there are hidden costs in terms of recruiting staff and setting up teams, which ultimately those costs would always be passed on to customers. So actually, whilst it might seem like we're spending a large sum of money, it might still be cheaper. But I mean, I think I noted the question. I think it's something that we do need to look into from a feasibility point of view. We've got big problems, particularly in this area, which we're working in partnership with the local authority, with other partners on, around fly tipping, around, you know, kind of illegal refuse disposal of bulk items, and I think, you know, we've got a very clear view, which we're trying to say there to the local authority, around there needs to be an enforcement side to that, there needs to be an education side to that, there needs to be a prevention side to that, you know, through looking at things like potential of kind of allocating schemes and the like. So we are trying to attack it on a couple of fronts. We recognise it's a problem. We are, what is the word I'm looking for, hemorrhaging costs with just going round clearing up fly tipping, and you clear it one day and it's back the next day, sort of 10 yards away round the corner. You know, Jodie and I have walked around the area, we know it's a big concern and we are committed to doing something about it. But it's not an easy one, unfortunately.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
So, I think, shall we open it up again to the floor? Has anybody got a question they'd like to ask? Kemoy's looking at me like he might have a question.
Can I ask Matt?
Sorry, Kemoy, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry. You're from the city council, are you?
No, Moscow, St Vincent's.
Right. Okay. So, why are you talking about the city council is cleaning up this and cleaning up that and all that? Because you don't know.
Well, the responsibility for the disposal of rubbish.
Yes, we all know that.
It's a local authority statutory
No, these
responsibility.
people-
However, rubbish which appears on our schemes or in neighbourhoods that we're responsible for, we have a role to play in removing that. The only point I was making is that it's a partnership. It is a problem in certain areas, including this area, and it's a partnership responsibility to tackle the problem. So it's an issue for us
But
as the
do
landlord.
you know why it's a problem?
Well, I think there's a number of factors. One of them, which we know has been raised, is basically the suitability of the bin provision itself. One is people coming from out of the area and just dumping items.
No.
There's lots of different factors at play.
Okay, you can.
Yeah, the
Say
fly
it all
tipping
right,
is a
okay.
big issue within Mosside, like from Broadfield Road to near Princess Road. All the alleys is fly tipping, and most of the time it's people from out of town, like outside, come and do the fly tipping. Because today down at Artington Street and Grim Street, somebody just carried about 20 tyres and just put them down. And it's just like, I couldn't be bothered. You know what I mean? And you see people come even Rosebery Street, the bins them at the back of the park. You see people come with the Salford Eye van, all sort of van, and they just throw the rubbish. Sometimes I see them, I'm like, you're on the camera, and I take out my phone. Because they don't live here, but they just come and just go like that with the rubbish. So we as a community as well, we have to keep on top of it, even though we're waiting on the local authority to help us to take the rubbish away. Once you see, just approach them nicely. You don't need to put the rubbish on the ground, you need to put it in the bin. If the bin is full, you can't go somewhere and find another bin. But the fly tipping is a big issue, and it's causing mice to come into people's house and lots of roaches. Because people complaining about, since the fly tipping is the way it is, the mice them start coming back in people's house. So that's a big thing for MSV/Manchester City Council.
Yeah, agree. Thank you, Jodie. So I'm just going to go over to Keyboy, because I think Keyboy would like to ask a question.
I don't know who can answer, but it'd be nice to know in terms of antisocial behaviour, what's that looking like at the moment with MSV? Because I know in the past you had antisocial behaviour officers that were out and about doing bits and bobs, so it'd be nice to kind of know how things are looking in terms of that front. In terms of future for Moscow as well, is there plans to possibly look at youth workers in Moscow, St Vincent's? Jodie made a good point before. There are a lot of families that are Moscow residents that again might be having problems with young people in the home, or there might be, various things going on, but what's that engagement looking like? I know we can have our residents officer or all these people in these meetings and stuff, but does Moscow have any plans in terms of future looking at youth workers working within Moscow? I think all the other roles are great, but there isn't a role specifically that deals with young people, and we've got to be real about that. You can have all these community engagement, there's massive differences with that, but I'm talking about a specific role where a youth worker is in Moscow St Vincent's. So I'm not sure who can answer that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
I'll ask Matt to pick that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think on your first point, Keymoy, antisocial behaviour is still an issue in certain areas where we operate. We've still got those antisocial behaviour officers operating as part of our neighbourhood teams. I think going back to something I said right at the start, we do recognise that we've got a piece around needing to ramp our visibility back up as we're starting to come out of the pandemic. I think for all of our staff, other than sort of scheme-based staff and repair staff, nobody's been as visible as they were. I think on the whole, I would probably want to differentiate, and again it comes back to, sure you know this, so forgive me for stating the obvious. There's antisocial behaviour that we're responsible for as the landlord, which needs to be clearly differentiated from kind of police responsibility around crime. And sometimes there are overlaps between the two, but I think I'd probably just make that distinction. We're involved, because I know we sit around some of the same tables, don't we, in I think where we need to be connected both operationally and strategically around some of the challenges in this area and others. I think we're around the right tables and we're seen as being part of the solution. I think on your point around youth workers, certainly we've had quite a few conversations in the business recently, and I think we've not conceded defeat on it by any stretch, but I think we've kind of recognised that young people engagement is far more, it's very rewarding, but it's not an area where we've got particular expertise, and it's actually something that we're quite struggling to kind of bring into the business. So it might be, and we can take this conversation offline. It might be that the solution is that we need some kind of specialist role within the business, like a youth worker or a coordinator or someone who brings that type of engagement into the piece. I have to be honest, in terms of youth workers employed by the organisation, my immediate reaction to that is that there's other organisations who are better placed to deliver that than we are. And I suppose my instinctive answer, without having any chance to think about it, is I'd rather pay or co-fund an organisation like the Powerhouse, like, you know, the organisation that you represent, Hideaway, you know, whoever that might be, because I think, you know, those types of organisations have got the expertise, they've got the local connection, they're well known and highly visible in the community. That isn't to say that we're just about delivering our landlord functions only, because we're not. We have a much wider role to play than that, but I just think others might be better placed. However, that said, I do think we need to look at what resource we're committing to kind of young people and that interface with us more than we've done up to date, most definitely.
Thanks, Matt. And what I would just add to that, of course, it's not youth workers specifically, but we do have 2 foyers that work with young people between 16 and 25 who are either homeless, sofa surfing, the various issues, and they come to live at the foyer, and we'll work with them for 2 years, and then they'll either stay in education or they'll move on into independent living. So I suppose we do a lot of work with young people, but it's not youth work, it's more kind of housing and support work. But I think Moy raises a good point.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, like obviously being a Mosque Care St Vincent's resident for God knows how many years, you know, I've been very proud of the services that have been provided, the help and support towards young people, and everything has been great. When I went out today, before I brought some of the young people with me, but I came from door knocking with obviously a political party before, and when we were going around asking about issues, no one that said anything negative about Mosque Care as their housing provider. I heard about other housing providers that, you know, again, you know, you could tell the difference, you know what I mean, and I was proud of that, do you know what I mean? So I feel like we can always be one step ahead by making sure we've got all the right services available. And I feel like if there is youth work there, then I know we can hit their nail on the head with supporting some of our parents that are really struggling with young people within your residence.
Well, you know, Kimo, you are our youth ambassador, so I think we'd certainly want to talk to you about that, you know, outside of this meeting. Yeah. So I'm going to move on, if that's okay, because we've got a few questions to get through. This gentleman here.
Question one thing. You said youth workers, but what about the parents?
That's what I mean, to work with the families.
We need somebody. You got youth workers, yes. You do the tidying up, because when the kid leave from home and they go out, doesn't matter what the parent says to them. When they go out, they operate totally different.
Yes.
So you need people to educate the parents more.
Yeah.
And if you can educate the parents more, it's like you prepare your child to go to school. You don't have a child going to school and they say, well, such the teacher start teaching them. You start them from home, and then this is where they start making improvement. So there's not every kid is going to be like that. But if you have the parents, if you involve the parents with it, it helps a lot. And it's for us to work together.
That's true.
And it's to have meetings together and to know, well, I've seen it. What are you doing here? Like, you recognize that child recognizes you. It's not going to do something. But we don't work. So all the youth workers you have, but we still need the parents.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, what you're saying is right, because like Kimo do a good job when it comes on to youth, and there's most of the time you've got parents that interact, and you've got some parents, they just send their child, they don't really take part in nothing.
Correct.
So what you're saying is a valid point, as me and Kimo, we know that parents play a great part where the children is, because when they're at home, they're the nicest kids, but when they're out on the street, there's something else. If somebody see me coming like a youth, say, oh, Jodie see coming, Jodie coming, and you know, they're not going to do what they're going to do. And if I see them and they intend, in my head, they intend to do something, I stop them before I like, what are you up to? Rare, and then you get a talk. If they have bad intention, they'll switch from it because you approach them nicely. So as I say, it takes a village to raise a child. You understand? We, and all of us here, we have a part to play with these youths coming up. We already live our lives, so we have to look out for the young ones coming up. So MSV, as Kimo said, there's no complaint for the longest, even in the pandemic, we don't really get that complaint about people's like, oh, this happened, that happened, and you know, MSV doing what they need to do at the moment. I can't fault you, not because I'm a tenant, but they're doing what they're doing, supporting local events in the community, and that play a great part as well. Is even if it's even £500 and they say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to give it to the community, whichever, and they do what they need to do. Most organisation people live in other properties and they turn them away. So as a youth worker, if you come to MSV and they can't give you the amount what you would want, they still manage to give you something, and that can go a far way. So the support from MSV with activities in the community is very great. I can't fault you as a person put on events as well and a big part of the community. So thank you for your support over the years. And before I come off that, what is MSV intention? You know, the Queen Jubilee coming up. What's the plan where MSV is concerned for the residents, especially the elders that's going to live in hotspots where they're going to be parties? What is the plan? So it's going to be MSV/Manchester City Council plus Greater Manchester Police. So that's something we have to discuss for like elders, people who are deaf, people who can't take the noise. So like the hotspot, this is something that needs to put in place up until that weekend. And that's something that needs to look into very deep before the time.
I mean, obviously, in terms of individual events like the Jubilee, we have a lot of people that have approached us saying that they want to do something, whether it's inside a scheme or whether it's a street party. Any street parties, obviously, if a road's closure, then it's the local council that has to be approached. So, like you say, Manchester Council would be. So it would be a partnership working with the neighbourhood officers, just to make sure that everybody's aware of what's occurring. And we want to work with local authorities and anybody else that's in the vicinity and our communities.
And we work by time, and if there's a time like Roseville Street is the main spot and it's a hot spot where you got only for elders that live on that side. And what about if the party is going to keep, is there a lock-off time? And I mean, it has to be a lock-off time?
I think, Jodie, when people are going to be putting in bids for street parties and stuff like that, there'll be limits put on what people can and can't do because they've got to close the street, there'll be a start and a finish time, all that sort of stuff. And all of that will be in place, and the local authority will have those controls. So, and I wouldn't want to forget the spirit of this, which is it's the Queen's Jubilee. You know, the people who are going to be making the bids, because they're making them now, and there are funds available now that groups can bid for, specifically in relation to the birthday events. They're all the sort of things that are going to start early and finish early. Jodie, you know, and we just have to work. We just have to play our part. We just have to play our part with other people like the city council and the police and all the rest of it to make sure.
Can I just bring Matt in because I know he wants to say something?
I think the point that you've raised, Jodie, is really, really valid, because we know that we've had issues, haven't we, particularly on Roseby Street around Carnival, and I think we've had. Probably, I know it's been unusual, so a couple of years, so I don't want to get too kind of carried away and sounding like us and the police and the partnership have been too self-congratulatory, but I think we've been reasonably successful and a bit more on the front foot in the last couple of years than perhaps, you know, years prior to that around heading off and dealing with some of those issues. So I think you've flagged up a point which certainly I hadn't thought of, I'll be dead honest, around some of the risks around Jubilee events getting out of hand, and I will pick that up early next week with the partnership and the senior people within the police and the local authority. I'm sure someone's thought of it. It's that tipping point, isn't it? Because actually it's about, you know, it's about celebrating Jubilee as and in much the, well, not the same way, because it's a different event, isn't it? But in the same way, in some ways, that the carnival is around celebration of the diversity of the area and the rich cultural history of the area. But there are some risks that go alongside that, aren't there, for people living in the area who can be seriously disrupted if it kind of tips into something else. So absolutely hear what you're saying, and we'll flag that up next week.
Thanks very much, Matt. Thanks, Jodie, for the question. I'm going to go and take another one that's been emailed in to us. Are staffing levels for repairs higher or lower than before COVID? And I'm going to go back to you, Matt, for that, please.
We've got a few more staff, and I think I know why the question's been asked, because we know that, and again, I'm not going to kind of pull any punches here or be anything other than entirely honest. We know that repairs wait times at the moment, I think it was alluded to before, they're not at the level that we would want them to be at. We've basically got a situation where the demand for repairs at the moment is fairly unprecedented, and I think there's a few reasons and drivers for that, but I think one being there was a period of time in the pandemic where we were on reduced services, so there's still a level of unmet demand which is still coming through the system, and I think people have spent more time in the homes, so have probably, I would suggest that our intelligence is telling us have reported more repairs than what we've seen in previous years. That said, it's back to what I said before, that's our problem and not yours. We have got some other issues in the mix around, it's quite difficult at the moment to recruit and retain staff in certain trades. There's a few, I won't bore you with it, but issues around cost of materials, supply chain disruption. So there's a few different things going on. But I think that question, if I've understood it correctly, was inferring that we must have reduced the number of repair staff because of wait times increasing. And I think, hopefully just to give that assurance that absolutely isn't the case. We've actually got more people working within the service, but as I say, the issue at the moment is this 4,000 outstanding jobs, and wait times are around 20 days, which isn't acceptable for certain trades. To take the point earlier, we would like to, if we can, move to a point where we can prioritise sort of people by vulnerability and by situation rather than having this kind of blanket approach. But I think the big priority in the short term is come back to something we were discussing before. We get the phones answered, we get the repairs issued, and we get out and we do them as quickly as possible, and that's the aim of what we're wanting to achieve.
Thanks, Matt. I'll throw it back to the floor. Has anybody got anything they'd like to raise? Any more questions?
I think the jobs gone down, Matt, in terms of number. So I know you said if you had 4,000 jobs that were still outstanding, like, has the figure gone down, or are you still pretty much at that level where there's still loads of jobs to go?
Well, it was at its peak. It's gone down from a peak where we basically had, I think, just trying to remember the exact time, we've had that many different iterations of lockdown, haven't we, and coming in and out of it. I think when we came out of lockdown and we returned to full repairs, I think it peaked at about 4,500 jobs. So the basic issue at the moment, again, I'm being very sort of candid and very upfront with customers, I think that's really important. We're getting about 120 jobs a day, new jobs, and we're only doing about 95. Yeah, now 95 doesn't make us unproductive. That's about an average kind of benchmark. We have got some issues as an organisation that our geography is quite dispersed as well, which presents us with some challenges around some of our kind of outlying areas. So what we need to do, we've either got to up our productivity at the risk of stating the obvious, so we're doing more than 120 jobs a day to get the numbers down, yeah, or we somehow need to reduce the demand so that 95 starts to drop to 85 and then it comes down. But again, we're looking at, whether we can increase the workforce, whether we can offer extended hours to include things like evening and weekends, because actually lots of people don't want the repairs done in the day anymore, so why should we be any different? So we are looking at different things, but it is a challenge for us at the moment, and I'm not saying that as in worries us, because it's the customers that are impacted upon by any delays in completing jobs, and we are committed to trying to deal with it. But as I say, just want to be very honest and upfront with what the situation is around repairs this evening. I think it's really important.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to go to one more that's been emailed in to us. Again, it's about communal repairs. If more than one visit is required to fix something, why do we always have to chase for more information and updates? If this was entered on the block scheme account, tenants can see if they check, or the customer service team can see it when someone phones in. I'm not sure if Matt or TD want to take this.
Well, I'll take it.
Yeah.
If you look on the website, and go into your portal account, you will be able to see the communal repair. So you can see what's happening. But I also understand when somebody says something like that, that if people feel that they're having to chase something, you know, we've got to maybe try and do something there so we can inform people in a better way. So we're still working on that. We've made that big change. You can see it on your portal account, and as I said before, the team can look on the communal block and see the repairs and tell you what's going on. But if we could be a bit more proactive about it, you wouldn't have to call.
Yeah.
So we're not resting on the improvements that we've made. We want to make more, and we are conscious that when it comes to common area repairs, there's more that we could do to stop people having to contact us at all if they knew exactly what was going on, and we were able to communicate with people in a better way. They would know that's going to get fixed at this date, or there's been a follow-on job, so we've done the first bit but we need to do the second bit, or we've had to order parts, and as Matt said before, parts, you know, there are supply issues with some parts, but you know, if we can provide you that information, you know what's going on. So we want to get to that point.
Well, before we go on, can I just say, right? Okay. Before Mosquera St. Vincent came about, right? It was just Mosquera.
Yeah.
And Mosquera had a policy, well, I don't even know if it was a policy, but, you know, you could just phone through free to do a repair or whatever. It was all free phone. Yeah? Even in emergency time, you know, with gas or whatever. And you would be answered and you would be responded to and all that. It doesn't happen anymore.
So
why not?
So, as we said before, we are acutely aware of the fact that it is taking too long to get through to somebody on the phone.
No.
And what we're doing about that is prioritising answering calls above anything else between 8:30 and 5 o'clock. Looking at how we can do the emails and stuff like that before 8:30, after 5 o'clock, so that they don't forgotten because they're really important. We know that we've got some challenges with some absences because of illness. There's nothing that any of us can do about that. If somebody's ill, they're not there, and that presents its challenges. But we are acutely aware that it isn't good enough, and we want to make some big changes to make it better.
Okay,
They're doing changes, so in a couple of months, it should be okay.
Thanks,
And I
Trent.
think the phone line will be more active. Instead of wait 10-15 minutes, might be just 5 minutes on the phone.
There's one question. Is it free, phone call?
Yes, it's 0161 number.
We still have a free phone number.
Yeah?
But obviously my mobile contract, I've got a contract, if I ring 0161 226 4211, it's covered in my contract.
Yeah, most of us are now. I think.
Yeah. So
I think
whatever
the
you use, whether it's your landline or your mobile, it's if you ring that 0161 number,
That's good.
it will be covered in your contract, and you just need to look at your contract. I actually spoke to a customer last night who had a very, very similar question, because some contracts, when you go over a certain amount of time, they'll charge you. Now, obviously, I don't know about everybody's different contracts. Without looking at them, I can't tell you what's going to happen if you go over a certain amount of time. But yeah, it's covered in your contract, so everyone needs to have a look at their contracts with their providers. Okay.
Thanks, Tranjit. So I'll go to one more question that's been emailed in. Will MSV tenants be able to offer rooms to Ukrainian refugees? And I think I'll answer that question. I mean, obviously, I don't think there's a person in this room that isn't devastated to see what's happening with the refugee situation in Ukraine. The government's position at the moment is that they are opening up the programme for people to be able to house refugees and get the £350 a month payment, although for most people that's not what it's about, to individual households. So they're currently doing that at the moment. We're working with our trade body, the National Housing Federation, and we're feeding into some work that they're doing to make sure that we are actually then able to offer the same scheme to our own customers, and that MSV as a business is also able to offer some properties. So we may have some void properties that we can offer. We may have some empty rooms in our sheltered schemes or for young people at our foyers, but we're going to do a concerted piece of work across Greater Manchester with our partners in Greater Manchester to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to help the refugees coming into this country. But at the moment we are just waiting for the government and the local authorities to sort out how that's going to work, and then we will tap into that and do what we can. So has anybody?
Just a quick one, I think to you, Matt. I think this was mentioned before I came into the room actually, and I think you were answering it. My concern is, Matt, there's a lot of people where, again, they're probably not earning enough, etc. But with the price rises now, with the houses, it's going to affect a lot of people in the community if it hasn't done so already. And my worry is there's a lot of people, again, that are not in good positions to be able to keep up to the new prices that MSV have set. Because, I mean, we all got a letter, and when I seen it, I thought, you know, what's a lot of people going to do? And I'm just a bit cautious of that. And I think one thing that doesn't help is when Mosques and Vincent, and just generally people send letters, you need to understand that there's a lot of people that will see it and probably won't understand what it is. And we have that community sometimes, or, you know, where that happens. And I think there needs to be more education to people in the community so we can try and understand what these things mean. Because I want to appeal, do you know what I mean? Because for my family, you know, can't afford, do you know what I mean? But I don't know the process. And that's what I'm saying, like there needs to be some type of understanding and allowing us to get to know a bit more about how to appeal the process and that. And I feel like the letter just came and said, yep, from this date, your price, your rent's going up, and that's all. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like there needs to be more of a better communication as to how we can appeal the decision, or what can we do as residents to have more conversation about things like this as well.
And as about the rent, there was someone that came across me. She hadn't paid her rent for 1 week, and she's been in the property for how long? Because difficulty, and the MSV housing officer. She she rang up and she was like going on with herself, whatever, you know what I mean? But there's certain people within MSV where the rent is concerned, they need a bit more discipline, and they need to know how to talk to people regarding to the rents. Because you might get your rent in the bank and there's something comes up. Yes, your rent is important because you cannot live outside. But at the same time, if you miss 1 week rent or 2 week rent as a MSV cost tenant for 10, 15 years, I don't think the housing officer should really have a go at that person to write letter to say rent hasn't been paid for 2 weeks, so on and so forth. Everybody have difficulties, so some of the housing officers, then worse if, like I'm an MSV tenant and my rent is always in credit, 300 and 400 and £100, always in advance. So if one time I fall short, so my housing officer is going to write me, Jody, you need to pay your rent. And I'll tell her straight, I'm not paying it this week till next week when I can pay it. You understand? So there's a particular person within MSV people have been complaining about for years. And I think she was a part of my housing officer. And I say to, if I had to speak to her, even though I'm a part of MSV, I do not want to speak to her because she needs to be more
polite.
Yeah, and understanding.
So we're not going to actually mention anybody's name because
Yes.
obviously that
Yes,
would
but
be
I think you're
appropriate.
all aware.
But I think thank you for raising it, Jodie. Matt, do you want to just come in on the rent issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think just on that, again, without mentioning any names, we are doing a big piece in the business at the moment around trying to basically really instill in all colleagues who come into contact with customers the importance of respect, because actually you can have difficult conversations with people about all sorts of different things, but there is a way of having that conversation with empathy and with respect. So we're having a big push on that, and
Yes,
I think we can take that conversation offline about the circumstances that
Yes.
you're referring to. I think picking up on Keymoy's point, it's really interesting that that's still not landed in the way that we wanted it to land, because that statutory notice letter that goes out, so the one that's like a legalese letter, that has to go in a very prescribed format. But we spent quite a lot of time on the supplementary information that went with it, explaining how the rent increase is calculated, why it's come about. There's quite a big reference there to service charges, which, because of the cost of living increase, we've actually capped service charges. So, again, not an insignificant amount of money, but no one's paying more than a £5 a week increase in service charges. So, we've clearly got, it just goes to show, I suppose, and this is why sessions like this are really important, because I was kind of sat there, well, not literally a head office, but kind of sat there thinking, I think we've done a pretty good job of this year. We've covered the bases, we've got the customer communications rights, and the fact that, you know, we've kind of come here today and said, well, actually, it's still not fit for purpose. That's something we need to reflect on and take away.
Absolutely.
We can't turn the clock back on what we've done this year.
But I think we need to make sure also that people are aware that we do have a money management team, and I think Ranjit would like, do you want to mention something about the team?
Just very quickly, because in the information that we sent out to people, we've had a money management team in place for quite some years, and they provided support to people, so I'd encourage anybody that wants to talk about their situation and how we can support them through a difficult period. That's what we've got the money management team there for. There's a number of us who've been talking to customers about the rent increases, me included. I've made a dozen calls speaking to people, just helping them understand how we've got to where we've got to, but also identifying and being in a position to say, would you mind if our money management service contacted you? Because they might be able to help you with your situation. And in each of those cases, we're getting information back. So I know that in some situations, we are making direct help to people because they're able to get universal credit, because they were working and their hours and the pay that they're getting is such that they're actually going to get some universal credit. That doesn't mean that we're going to be able to help everybody. It just depends on everybody's circumstances, but that money management service has been there for years, and please make sure that if you need that support, you just let us know.
With like tenants that live in MSV property for 10-15 years, I think there's a new thing that people complain to me about, like if the light needs changing, they said it's a part, they have to pay MSV for it. Like if the bathroom, like, the special light and
The bulb.
Like
the bulb.
the light, the
bulb.
light,
The bulb inside
no,
the
not
light.
the bulb, it's like
The
a
light.
special light.
Yeah.
So the lady was saying, when she called MSV for them to fix the light, the person on the phone was telling her that is something that she has to pay to get fixed. So I said, I don't really know about that unless it's something new in people's contract. Because if it's not in the contract, if the bulb, certain things in the house need fixing, I don't think you need to pay for it. It's a part of MSV property.
So I think there's just
you can get up there, to do it.
Yeah. So
because it's too high.
Okay, so
you don't have no ladder or whatever.
That's fine.
First-
We'll get it fixed, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, Jodie,
Yeah.
if there's a problem with the electrics, that's our responsibility.
Yeah.
But the light fittings are the individual's responsibility.
Okay.
Okay? And sometimes, particularly as time's gone on, you look at all the fancy lights that everybody likes and wants.
Yeah.
They cost. And that is out of our control. But we have, and I know because I'm sat with the service centre and I've done it, we've given people the best advice, Googled where you can go to get the cheapest bulb that you can get so that it fits where it fits. And just on the other point about being able to get up to lights, so at schemes like here,
Yeah.
We started a service that is working really well for people in the later years. And we've been supporting people at schemes, regular visits, and being able to help people with things like changing a light bulb.
Yeah.
You know, so that comes back to what we can do.
I'm going to come back
with
to
the
you
with the
with that. No,
Light bulb,
honestly,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so
No, the thing is, you know, one of these big, broad...
the tall
what do you
lights.
call- Yeah, the tall lights,
With the
right?
thing on it.
In the kitchen, right, okay, and it went off and all that. And usually you would nut the end
Yeah.
and it comes out.
Oh right, yeah,
It
the
did,
fluorescents.
right?
Yeah.
So I went down to the
Hardware.
shop and he said, right, well, buy a light, one of these
Long ones. Yeah.
and also, there's also a motor
A
thing.
motor on it.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So I bought them both,
Yeah.
right? Then I got home and there's no way I could get up there and
So we've got a handy person service at places like here, yeah, and they can do that, those little sort of jobs to people that are really hard to do in places like here.
shut up.
So why don't we pick that? Why don't we pick that up outside of here, and I can get that sorted for you.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
we
I know
can.
what you're saying.
All right, so we'll get it sorted for you.
Thank you, Taranjit.
It's done now. It's done.
Right, okay.
Eventually it was done because Marie, you know, got the handyman in.
Yeah.
That's him.
And, I mean, I stood on the box, you know, a contraption to get up there. I almost broke my neck getting up there.
Well, I'm glad that he was able to sort you out.
No. But it was sorted.
Good.
Eventually.
Good.
Well done to you. Okay.
It's not easy.
Can I bring Kimo in?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Taranjit, thanks for mentioning about the money management kind of session, but I don't think that's what a lot of people need. I think money management is teaching people how to manage the money, but a lot of people know how to do that. What I'm saying is, it'd be great if there was, I don't know, a pot of money there to be able to support people, especially where they've been affected by the pandemic and they've lost jobs. I'm just thinking like it'd be great for that.
Can I come in?
Yeah, for that to be certain. Because I feel like when that person did ring, she mentioned about the money management and whatever, and I said, listen, that's not what people want. People want support and help, do you know what I mean? And I think that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that there should be a budget available.
I think that's a really good point.
The money management they're not just coming to talk to you about managing your money. They do help with things like that.
No, I don't think they do.
I think they do.
Well,
So I
can
know, sorry,
can I
Matt's
just bring
gonna.
Matt in, please? 'Cause
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's kind of two sides to the coin, isn't it? I think there's the kind of money management. It's not financial advice. That's overstating what it is, but it's basically sitting down with people and making sure that any entitlements are being maximised. You know, it's hopefully. Well, no, say hopefully. I know it's not patronising. It's not paternalistic. It's about providing people with some support. Hear your point though, Kimo, that there also needs to be basically in times of crisis, what can you do for people? And I think in direct response to that, we've basically said this year that with a chunk of the additional monies from the rent increase, we've actually allocated a substantial pot of that towards a hardship fund, which basically, what we can't go down the route of is clearly saying that anyone who's struggling to pay the rent, well, there's a subsidy and don't worry about it, but there will be criteria, where for people who are in really kind of acute financial hardship, because we do recognise that times are getting tougher, you know, and I nearly collapsed last night when I filled up my own car, just that much the price. So, you know, you look at that, rising utility costs, times are really, really tough, and I think, you know, that hardship fund, I'm not saying it's going to plug every gap, because it won't, but I think that is a very, very clear statement of intent that we've made as a business around our desire to help people who are in acute difficulty, so we can pick that up, and we probably need to do a bit more around how we're promoting that in the price area.
That's something new.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Kimo?
Brilliant.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, so I've just got one more question on here, which I'd like to raise. How can MSV ensure that relevant information is passed to external contractors, i.e. gate codes, issues with residents or empty properties? I know this hasn't happened recently from personal experience. I think, Matt, you were going to take this one, were you?
I think
Well, I've got an answer from our head of asset management who isn't here this evening. Do you want me to read it out, Matt?
Well, I'll have a go at answering it, and then if I don't answer it as effectively as Gareth, who has written the response, by all means chip in. It just comes down to communication, doesn't it? It shouldn't be beyond our collective wit within the business to be able to pass on information to contractors relating to how they access schemes and ensure that they've got the, in some instances, the fobs or whatever, or the codes. It doesn't seem to happen as frequently as it should do. We need to get that sorted out, and I think it's one that, as part of this feedback, we need to take away and come back and say what we're going to do about that. It is an issue, and it shouldn't be. There, I've said it.
Yeah, completely agree. Thanks, Matt. Just one more question from here. Why has the change from one service provider to another been so problematic? And the customer here is talking about cleaning, window cleaning and grounds maintenance, and she wonders whether it's about shaping expectations or is it another problem? So again, over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I think we've gone from, if I'm not mistaken, using kind of, I think it was 33 different contractors for those services, down to 3. Actually, I think where we're at now is we are starting to see some significant benefits of having a smaller number of contracts. It's easier for us to manage, it's easier for us to monitor. There should be greater consistency around quality of service. But I think, again, I've said from the outset, I want to be very, very honest at these sessions. I think there were some teething problems initially when we were moving to those new arrangements, and I suspect I hope anyway, there might be a little bit of a lag between what people were experiencing a few months ago and where we are now. But that said, there will still be issues with those contractors in some instances, and again, we need to make sure we've got all that we deal with those issues.
All right, thank you, Matt. So I think our time is coming to an end this evening. We've just got a few minutes left. So if anybody's got any final thoughts or...
When is the next meeting?
No, we should do this regularly. I think it's brilliant.
Tomorrow, Jodie.
Yeah, I think you need to have more of these meetings to hear more voices of the community, how they feel, and whatever feedback they can offer to MSV. So I think it needs to be probably 4 times for the year. You bring these meetings forward, so different ideas will come into MSV from residents. So,
Can I ask you to answer that?
Sure. These are going to be quarterly. They're not going to be online streamed as well as in person. They're going to be in person, and we do want that two-way conversation. We want to hear from you. We don't want to expect, we're not here to say this is what we think you want. We want to know what you want so we can change our services accordingly. So they're going to be quarterly. The next one is 16th of June, and it's going to be our new Great Western Street offices. So you can...
The MSV, the old one.
Yeah, the old one.
The new Positive Futures.
Yes,
no, we can say it's the old one because we used to the old one.
We did, back in the day. But we are also going to have, as Matt said earlier, some ad hoc travelling forums where we come with a chip van and we just say, tell you. Yeah, the chip van's very popular. So it's got chips and chat. We'll probably get more attendance through that one, we just roll up, we'll tell you where we are, just come and have a chat. You can chat with Charlie, our directors and head of services, and just have a,
I think I'll be very honest with you, I think it's brilliant what you guys are doing. I think, and that's what I meant about being one step ahead. I think it's nice that we can, I'm proud that Muscat St Vincent is doing this, because there are a lot of residents that do want to ask questions but might not have the right people as well to answer them, and I feel like now we're aware of this, like even myself and Jodie being connected in the community and Tony and everyone, we can really kind of speak to the Muscat residents who might not see the letters or whatever or the emails, and we can say, look, Muscat St Vincent is putting this on, like, come and voice.
Because on that note, there's a lot of people like get in touch with me to bring up more scares. Sometimes I'm like, why me? People just like, Jodie, if you call them, they'll listen to what you said. I can't explain myself the way you would explain it. And I think that's good because there was like few persons that I know, one of them was in hospital on a stroke, but when I go to the house, the thing wasn't working. And by the time I ring MSV, tell him he's going to come out of the hospital at this time, they send the engineer, everybody, so all the wires were working in the house, so when he come from hospital, they couldn't, and it wasn't working for time, but he didn't notice. But because he had a stroke and I was the first person to call, so when I go, they said, let me check all the things. They wasn't working, but by the time I ring MSV, in space of a couple of days, they come and fix everything that needs to fix. So if we should drop in the property or anything, you can just ring the thing and then assist it. And so that's something, again, which is very good. And I think like all the people who is elderly in MSV property, I think if they got the card thing in the house, even if they don't take sick, I think somebody should go out and check them at all time, make sure they're working. Yeah. That's in case of emergency, the panic button is ready to pull. So I think like all the elders that you got on the list, you just make sure all the panic button working, because right now the way of things is people having strokes, people dropping down, they might feel sick, they can just easily draw the thing, and you know what I mean. So I think all of them things need to check to make sure they're up and running.
We've got panic buttons in our neck if we want it.
Huh?
We've all got panic buttons in our neck if we want it. I've got one.
Not everybody liked to wear the panic button because he wasn't wearing his panic button, and he managed to reach down the stairs.
I think it's a really good point actually, because we have got an ageing population, and for every older person who may live on this type of scheme, which are fantastic and meet the needs of lots of people, you've actually got an ageing population in kind of general needs housing where there isn't that infrastructure and support, which, you know, some people don't need it, some people don't want it. So we need to look at, from a physical asset point of view, what's input, you know, kind of, what's the word? It's like assistive technology, which enables people to live independently in their home. So we're very aware of that.
Yes.
And you live on Elmwood, so which hopefully don't come much better than that.
Thanks, Matt. So we've literally got 2 minutes left. So do you want to wrap things up, Matt? Just a few final words.
Yeah, I can do. I mean, I think I was a little bit nervous around how this was going to go tonight, because I was kind of thinking, I just couldn't quite picture it in my mind how the sort of live stream was going, and then you get that was going to work. How's that going to interface with the kind of chat bit in person? Are people going to turn up? And I think it's been, you know, after a few little scraping of chairs and people all arriving at different times, I actually think it's gone really, really well. I think there's been great engagement. The people have contributed. It's been very, very positive, and I think it's going to be really important that where people have raised specific issues, that we come back to people and that we publish what we're going to do in response to those issues. I think we won't be able to sort everything immediately, and I think we've mentioned a couple of challenges that we've got tonight around call answering and repairs backlog, which I think, you know, hopefully it's not going to take us too long, but it's not going to probably be overnight before we sort those things. But hopefully what you've seen is a really genuine commitment from us around wanting to have that dialogue, wanting to bring forward customer voices and to hear from the people that we're here to serve. You know, I keep trying to instill this in, I mentioned before, this customer focus piece. You know, we are here, we exist, you know, to ultimately provide good quality homes to live in and to help to contribute to improving lives of people who live in communities that we serve. And if we're not about that, then I think people are probably working in the wrong type of sector, in the wrong organisation. But I think this has been a really positive start. It was a bit trial and error tonight, but I think it's gone really, really well, and I welcome all the feedback, and also for people giving up the time to turning out in your own time. Never lost on me that you know, I'm ultimately getting paid to be here and other people aren't. So really, really grateful, and we will see you again, and we will come back to all the issues raised. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt. And thanks everybody for joining us, and safe travels home, whether you're going upstairs in the lift or further afield. Thanks everybody.
Thanks. Thanks.